Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session. Please make sure that your mic is off. Mute yourself. Dinu, I can see your microphone is on. Thank you. Unless you want to say something, you can unmute yourself, and then you can come on board. All right. So this morning we're going to kickstart with chapter 8. What you were supposed to do last week, and there was an error from my side because I didn't read the timetable appropriately, so I made a mistake there. And by the time that I came to class, you guys were not there. So it's fine, but we're going to we're a bit late compared to other groups, but I'm sure we're going to catch up with them after this session. After this session. So what is going to happen here? I'm going to share my screen. As you guys know, when I'm sharing my screen, it might be a bit difficult for me to see your hands up. So in case you want to ask a question or you want to I don't know, comment, intervene, you can just stop me straight away and then you ask your question. So in case you cannot also hear me properly, there could be some connection issues with the internet. So please let me know straight away so that you can correct anything that might be an obstacle for our session. So I'm going to share my screen. So I believe my screen is now visible on your side. Right, so today we're going to talk about location strategies and unpack what what is important when we are talking about location strategies. What do we have to consider? What are the kind of analysis probably we have to adopt in order to understand location strategies? So first thing first, that we need to understand what is a location strategy. So a location strategy is basically a process of a company choosing a new location for its activity. So it could be a location that is local to the company or an international location. So in other words, when a company is expanding its activities to new locations, you could consider an internal or a local location, or it can also consider an international location. So what are the strategies that are considered when it comes to identifying a new location for a business, a new country, or a new region, or a new site? So we're going to see the strategies. And that's why I usually say that this chapter is dominated by the calculations that we are going to do. So we're going to talk about the factor rating method. It's an analysis that need to be done in order to identify proper location. Location break-even analysis. The same thing, center of gravity method. And lastly, we're going to talk about transportation model. So transportation model, we will see whether it will come in your test or not, or probably we'll check if It can even come as a form of assignment. So yeah, so we'll talk about it. I'll give you guys more details specifically about that method. So at the end of this chapter, you should be able to identify and explain 7 major factors that affect location decisions, apply the factor rating method, complete a location break-even analysis, can also do this graphically or mathematically. You should be able to use the center of gravity method. And lastly, you're going to use the load distance analysis, which is the transportation model. So this is the backbone of what you have to have at the end of this chapter. So one question that you should also ask yourselves is that what is the point of a company identifying or trying to expand its business activities to a new location? So at the basis of everything, it's all about money, so making profit. Because if a company is not making profit, in regard, or is not going to make profit in regard to a new location that it's willing to establish its activities to, that becomes a problem, right? And that location could also be disregarded because the company is not going to be profitable or is not going to make money in establishing its activities in a new location. So that's why it's telling us here the objective of a location strategy is to maximize the benefit of a location to the company. Can you please make sure that your mics are muted? There is somebody who's somebody's mic is on. Please do so, because otherwise, if I go there, I'll just exclude you from the session because you are disturbing. Okay, let's just exclude this guy. From here, I should be able to know who's disturbing. Is it Abiseng Mashasha? Can you please switch off your mic? Thank you. All right, so that's why it says that the objective of a location strategy is to maximize the profit of a location to the firm. So it's all about making money, having benefit that need to emanate from choosing that location. So at the end of the day, if a location is not profitable, a company can close down or identify another location where it could be profitable in terms of doing business. So when it comes to location strategies, you can also look at this from another analogy whereby you can consider a plant, for instance, a plant or a flower. For a plant to grow, right, appropriately, it needs fertile soil, soil that is good, and it also needs light, probably water, and things like that. So that is a good environment for a plant to grow, for a flower to thrive. So the same also applies to a business. So for a business to grow, for a business to bring good returns on investment, all the conditions have to be there or have to be on point in order for a business to thrive. And this is what we refer to as considering the key success factors. So key success factors are factors that need to be considered by a business for that specific business to thrive, to make money, and also bring good investment returns. So these key success factors are critical and important for a business to consider when it's coming to when the business now want to expand to new countries, for instance, to new regions, or to identify a specific site for building, for instance, an industrial plant. So what you need to understand here is that when we are talking about the key success factors, there are three levels. So the first level is it's at the country level. That's the country. So let's say we have a company here, we are running a business and the business is doing well, and we want to now expand our activities to a new country in Africa, for instance, a new country in Africa. How is that going to take place? So in Africa, there are many countries. So we're going to choose the country where we can see the key success factors are satisfied. So this is where we have 6 here, but this is just an overview of the factors. There are other factors that are outside of what is mentioned here. For example, if you are we want to expand our business activities to Africa, to other countries in Africa, we first of all going to choose a country. Let's say we choose Rwanda, for instance. And on which basis we're going to choose Rwanda? So first of all, we're going to check perhaps the political stability of the country. How stable is the country? How politically is the country stable in terms of doing business there, right? How does the government rules could affect the business operations, right? And you're also going to talk about the cultural attitude of the people, and also from the economical perspective, right? And the location of the market, labor, talent, and this could be the education level, right? How skilled are people from, let's say, from Rwanda? I'm just taking an example just like that. You could have taken another country like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia, and things like that. So we also look at availability of supplies. Is it possible to get raw materials that we need in order for our business to operate there? In terms of electricity, could also include the infrastructure. Does that company has the infrastructure that our business requires? It could be something like the 5G. Is the 5G already available in Rwanda so that our business can operate appropriately, right? Exchange rate in terms of the strength of the currency that they are using there, right? So all these conditions have to be met or have to be taken into account and evaluated so that a business can thrive, or a country can be chosen for a business to identify, or a business to expand its activities to that location. So this is the first level, what you call key success factors at a country level. So the same thing also when an international company want to come and invest in South Africa here, or want to come and invest in Africa, they might identify South Africa as the best location based on the attractiveness of the country, right? How's business like? How's the business environment is like? Is it promoting business? Are there specific zones that the business can thrive? Are all those elements, in place for a business to thrive? Right. So they choose South Africa. Once they choose South Africa here, they're not going to plant or they are not going to operate just from all over the country. They are now going to choose, for instance, the province. And this is why we refer to as key success factors at a regional level or community level. So this is are specific provinces that need to be taken into account or be evaluated in order for one to be chosen based on the key success factors. How's the region attractive in terms of doing business? Let's say a company coming from another country in Africa or overseas want to come and invest in South Africa. South Africa has been chosen, and the country operate, let's say, in the wine industry. Just take an example, and that company is now going to evaluate amongst the 9 provinces that South Africa has, which province that has or is well known in terms of wine production. So Western Cape is one of them. So now that country is going to check and see, apparently Western Cape is a region or a province whereby a business operating in the wine industry can operate. Why? Because the environment, probably the climate is quite good in terms of growing I don't know, whatever that need to be transformed, or the raw materials that need to be transformed into producing wine, right? So that is what you call key success factors at a regional level or at a provincial level, right? You're going to read the rest there on your own, or just giving you the main segmentation of the key success factors. So once a province or a region is chosen based on the element that we refer to as the key success factors, now it goes to a site level. So this is the third level. So remember, the first level, country level, for key success factors. You have regional level, key success factors, and you also have a site key success factors at a site level. So here is going to depend on, again, the attractiveness and also the regulation. And it could also be depending on the infrastructure of that specific site and how close would be the site and from the site to the market, right? Are road well paved in terms of transporting probably wines from sorry, from the production area to the market, right? What will be used? So also the restrictions that the government or the local government has put in place in terms of protecting the environment, right? And so that we can reduce the negative impact of whatever activities that being done to the environment. So quite interesting. So what you need to understand here is that there are 3 levels when we are talking about key success factors: at the country level, a regional level, and at a site level. So some of them, I'm not saying that these are all the key success factors, but for instance, during the test, you can come up with your own, right, based on your own understanding, your own, after reading, right, you can get extra insight in terms of the key success factors. So, those are the key success factors. So this is going to prepare us in order to do the analysis of the factor rating method. So these key success factors is for us to understand what need to be taken into account when it comes to doing some analysis, especially the analysis based on the factor rating structure. So political risk, we have already spoken about that. What's going on here? It's my thing. Proximity to market, how the product can be shipped from the production site to the market, and also how where suppliers are located, right, in terms of getting the raw materials. So there is one concept that I wanted us to expand on when we talk about proximity to competitors. So in that example that I gave you guys of a company from overseas or from America operating in the wine industry coming to establish its operations here in South Africa. And the company chooses Cape Town because Cape Town is a good environment for a wine industry or one related business or a wine-based business to operate. So in that case, in Cape Town, meaning that there are many businesses or many companies that are operating in the same industry, and now they are located in the same area, let's say in the same province. So now these are competitors because they operate in the wine industry, but they are located in the same area. And this is what you call proximity to competitors. And one of the concepts that describes proximity to competitors is what we called clustering. So clustering is a process of having more, or a situation of having competitors or companies that are competing in the same industry, and they are now close to each other, or they are located in the same area. That's what we call clustering. And you can also extend this concept of clustering to the service sector. Check this out. Where you usually see McDonald's, in a close range, you might also find KFC or Chicken Licken. In the same way, in a range where you find KFC or Chicken Licken, you might also see McDonald's or other related fast food outlet. And this is also found in some shopping centers, whereby you have what you call the food court, where you have McDonald's, all these restaurants are grouped together. However, they are competitors, but they are together, or they are found in close range from each other. And this is what you call clustering. So just think about it properly, because I think in the test, you're definitely going to have a question or questions on this concept of clustering. All right. So one of the example in terms of clustering, you guys can read about this, but I have already given you the overview of that clustering concept. Now, let's look at the first method. Guys, if you have questions or something is not clear to you, please feel free to, you can even use the chat box, but when I'm done, I can touch base on that. Yeah, or you can also stop me straight away and ask your question. So just feel free to interact. So the first model is what you call, let me just take my laser pointer. The first factor or method is what you call the factor rating method. They say it's popular because of a wide variety of factors that can be included in the analysis. So again, not any variables or any factors that can be included. There must be key success factors that are going to define the success of a business. So there are 6 steps, but don't worry too much about these steps, because at your level, you will be performing from step 5 to step 6. So the rest is when an analysis is being done from or being undertaken from scratch. But at your level, you're not going to take this from scratch. So be just doing step 5 and step 6. So in other words, the first step, you develop a list of relevant key success factors. You assign a weight to each of the factors, and the total weight must be equal to 1. We're going to see that in the example that is going to come just after this slide. Develop a scale for each factor. A scale must be developed. Score each location for each factor. And then now you have to multiply the score by the weight for each factor for each location. Lastly, you now need to recommend the location with the highest point score. This is the last step. In other words, the conclusion. That will be the result. What you have done so far, and now this is where the results lie. So let's look at this example here. This is an example of the factor rating analysis. So on your left inside here, you have the key success factors. Sorry. The key success factors that have to be taken into account for this business to decide between France and Denmark. So the other thing that if you are doing this analysis from scratch, it's probably might be better to take, for instance, 2 to 3 groups that are working on the same project, on the same analysis, so that at the end of the analysis, the 3 groups can compare their result and see which one to go with. So again, on the key, on the left inside here, you have the key success factors. This is just an example. You have labor availability and attitude, people to care ratio in terms of transportation, per capita income, tax structure, education, and health. Sorry. And close to that, you have the weight. So the weight here is, it must be equals to 1. So here, labor availability, you have 0.5, people to care ratio 0.05, per capita 0.10, tax structure 0.39, and lastly, education and health is 0.21. Right, that gives us a total of 1. Now, there are 2 locations here, France and Denmark. The scores here are out of 100. So again, you'll be provided with the scores. But if you have to do this from scratch, you have to do some research or market analysis in order to check the attractiveness of the country based on the key success factors that you consider, right? So some of them could be related to the level of corruption of a country in relation to the key success factors that are being considered. But at your level, we're not going to do that from scratch. We're going to provide you with the scores for each location. So here for labor availability and attitude for France, you have a score of 70, and Denmark you have 60. So what you are going to do, remember I say that what you need to do is just to multiply from step 5 to step 6. So multiply score by weight for each location for each factor for each location. So that's what we're going to do from here. So now, if you take this weight here, let's start with France, 0.25 multiplied by 70, and that gives us the score here, 17.5 for France. And Denmark, take 0.25 multiplied by 60, the score of Denmark under labor availability. And that gives us a score of 15. All right, so you must continue, do the same thing for people to car ratio for each location. Here you have 0.05 multiplied by 50. That gives us 2.5. The same for Denmark. So once you are done with this score here, now you sum them up. You sum up in order to find the final score. And here for France, you have 70.4 by summing up everything. And Denmark, if you sum up everything, that gives up 68. And remember, from this slide here, step number 6, say recommend the location with the highest point score. So that is what we are now going to recommend, or the steps that we're going to follow in order to recommend. So here you can see the highest score here is 70.4 compared to 68. Therefore, France seems to be the optimal location for this business compared to Denmark because of the score. So usually what happens is that we can say, okay, let's exchange some of the weight here. Per capita will be 0.21, and the education and health will be now 0.10. So just exchanging the weights, and then now you can do the calculations again in order to see if you're going to come up with the same conclusion. So something you can play around with. And during the test, you might also be having some questions like that, whereby the weights are exchanged. Now it's up to you to do the calculations again and see whether you're going to come up with the same conclusion or not. All right. So the factor rating analysis is quite straightforward. We just need to understand how to proceed with it, but it shouldn't be a big deal. You can also get more insight or some of the more insight from the textbook. Okay, guys, just give me a second. This is one of your tutors who want to. Yeah, but anyway, let me just respond when I'm done, because even if I say that I'm here, it's going to disturb me. Anyway, let's do this. Location break-even analysis. So this is another method, and this one is more interesting. And because it's considered, it's quite different, or it's totally different from the factor rating analysis. They are different. So here, when you are talking about the break-even analysis, we are talking about a method that considered cost volume, right? Cost volume of an industrial location, right? So there are 3 steps. The first one is to determine the fixed and variable cost for each location, right? You have to determine the fixed and variable cost. In other words, fixed and variable cost are critical, right? When it comes to doing an analysis based on the break-even approach. So what is a fixed cost? You have to determine the fixed cost of a location. What is a fixed cost? So that you don't mix between the fixed cost and a variable cost. That is important. One might say variable cost are costs that change as the volume changes, right? So one of the examples that we can put forward here is that can refer to that as raw materials that the company has to buy from its suppliers. And obviously, the cost will depend on the volume that the company is going to purchase from its suppliers. right? So that is related to that definition that I just gave you of the variable cost. You also have production suppliers, any other suppliers that will enter into the production system. Delivery costs are also considered as a variable cost. You have credit card fees, right, are also variable depending on how the card is being used and also the agreement with the bank, right? And you can also include to that electricity that you use, right, is also a component of the, or it's also considered as a variable cost, right? So we need to understand that. So now looking at the fixed costs tend to be the costs that are based on the time rather than the quantity produced or sold by the company, right? So here you have an example of the rent, right, that a company has to pay because of the plant location, right? Because it has to rent a unit, right, from probably a landlord, and monthly payment has to be have to be made, right? And you also have other lease related costs that are paid on a monthly basis. And some might also be talking about loan repayment that are also called fixed cost. And my question to you is that what about the salary, wages of employees? Where do you put them? Are they fixed cost or variable cost? Think about it, and then we'll discuss the next time that you're going to meet on that point. So I'll ask you guys the same question. So basically, you need to understand the difference between a fixed cost and a variable cost, right? And here we are talking about different locations. So that means that you have more than one locations that you are considering in terms of coming up with the optimal location for the business. So once that is done, you now move on to the next step, which is you have to plot the cost for each location. But there are some sub steps that need to be taken or need to be followed here in order to plot the cost of each location. So that means you're going to have a graph, and from that graph, you're going to plot the cost lines of each location. We're going to illustrate that with an example that is going to follow up right after this slide. And number three, you now need to select the location with the lowest total cost for expected production volume. So anyway, I'll give you guys more details about this as we discuss that example. So you're going to have different intervals, right? And from those intervals now you're going to choose which location is optimal compared to other locations. And this could be done graphically or mathematically, as we mentioned at the beginning of the chapter. So now let's look at this example here in order to illustrate the point. So this example here is providing us with three locations, right? So from the three locations, the company just need the location with the optimal cost, or the one provides the one that provides the lowest cost. So how do you know that one location is better than the others? So here you have three locations. You have Akron, Bowling Green, and Chicago. They were supposed to be South African locations so that you can relate better to the question, but it's fine. In terms of dollars there, we're going to consider using the rent. So instead of us talking about the how do you call it, the dollar, we're going to replace the dollar with the rand. Right. So, um, I'm going to explain selling price and the expected volume later on as we move along. So here, what you need to understand here is that you have the fixed cost and the variable cost for each location, as well as the total cost. But this total cost here is given or is used by considering the expected volume, right? The expected volume here. That is what is going to give us the total cost. So, and again, I will explain to you how to deal with the expected volume. Now, you can see below here, there is a total cost equation, right? The total cost equation, and is given by considering the fixed cost, and the variable cost multiplied by the volume. So, in other words, you can have, a contracted equation. It can be written F plus V times X, right? That is the contracted form of this equation. It's like an equation. So now, with these three locations here, this location here could be represented on a graph as a cost line. Bowling Green also could be represented on a graph as a cost line, the same for Chicago. That's what is done here. Okay, just pay attention. I'm going to break this down so that you guys can understand. But just follow me. So you see you have this graph here, or graphical representation of the scenario. Here you have, this is what you call the cost line. This is also a cost line. This is a cost line. But now the question is, how do you go about plotting these cost lines? That's where the problem is. How do you go about plotting these cost lines? So what you do is that you're going to go back to the table, this table here, so that I will show you or will demonstrate how to come up with the values that you need in order to plot that graph, so that you can understand the behavior of the cost lines. So let's do this. I'm going to exit. Let me make it a bit big. I have already done it here with the previous group, so I will explain from here. Right. So you see this total cost formula, also it's an equation, right? Could be also be written TC, total cost. So total cost is given by taking the fixed cost plus the volume times the variable cost. V is for the variable cost. So first thing first, you have to formulate the equation of each location here. So the first location is Akron. So following this structure here is Akron here. And the Akron, the equation says that you have to follow this structure. Fixed cost plus the variable cost multiplied by the X, which is the volume. So here the fixed cost for Akron is, I don't know if you call it Akron or Akron, anyway. So here the fixed cost for Akron is 30,000 rand. So you have 30,000 rand here, plus the variable cost. So the variable cost here is 75. So you have 75 here times the X, which is the volume. It's a variable that has to be determined. So boiling green, the fixed cost for boiling green is 60,000. So you have 60,000 here, plus the variable cost, which is 45, plus 45 times X, which is the volume. And Chicago, the fixed cost is 110. Is 110 here, and you also have 110 here, plus the variable cost. The variable cost here is 25. So 25 times X. All right, so you have formulated the equations of the three locations. Right, so in this case, now we have to move on to the next step. The next step here is now to determine the point at which these cross lines are going to touch each other. So let's look at this one here. You see the crossover point, or the point which the cross lines are going to meet are, you see right here, Akron and Bowling Green, they cross each other here, or they meet at this point here. So we want to determine the value at this point, and that value is going to give us this value here. It's already 1000, but remember, let's say you are plotting the graph, so you don't have these values here. So you have to determine these values here doing the calculations. So the same also, we're going to check at which point Chicago, this line here, and this line will meet. So the idea is to find the value here below, which is the x-axis, and the x-axis here are what we call the volume. This is the volume is represented below here in the x-axis, and on the y-axis here, this is your cost. So in other words, we're going to find the volume below here, the value of the volume, and then we're going to project that value, right? Because if you find a value here, you draw a line going up like this, and you also find another, in the corresponding cost for producing that volume. So the cost will be this side, and where the two lines will meet, that will be the crossover point of the two given equation that you have considered. But let's just go back to our thing so that you can demonstrate that. All right, so we have the equations here. So what is going to happen here is that we're going to check, we're going to equalize the Akron equation, or compare the Akron equations against the Boiling equation, this one against this one, and then this one against this one. Right, so let's start with the first one, is Akron and Bowling Green. So we are now looking for the point that two cross lines are going to meet. So here is the cross line for Akron. So we have Akron versus Bowling Green. So the equation for Akron, 30,000 plus 75x, which is here, is equal to Bowling Green. So the equation for Bowling Green, this is what you have here. So now you can see from here, it's now an equation whereby you have to solve for x. So you just proceed with what you know in terms of solving for x, because that is the unknown variable here, no, the unknown value. So if you have to solve for x, you take 45x, you bring it this side. So that's why you have 75x minus 45, because it's coming from the other side. And here you're going to have 60,000 minus 30,000 because 30,000 will go on the other side, right? And here you're going to have 30x. And on the side, you're going to have 60,000 minus 30,000. That is 30,000. And you just need to divide the two sides by 30 in order to have the value of x. So 30,000 divided by 30, that gives us 1,000 unit. Okay, obviously here they told us that the unit here is also unit. It's fine. So unit. Now, when you are doing this kind of calculations, what you are calculating here is the point at which these two, because this is a function, this is a function, this is also a line, this is also a line, which is also called a coastline. So here, this is where they are going to meet. This location here and this location are going to meet at this point, and this is the value on the x-axis. You see, Bowling Green and Akron, they meet here. And if you check, this is the value that we just calculated, 1,000. If you draw a line going up, they will meet here. Now, the issue is on this side here, we don't have the value, we don't know. But once you have calculated the volume, you can now also find the corresponding cost of producing 1,000 unit. So this could be done graphically, or it can also be done using the calculations. So here we have the volume of 1,000 units. All right, 1,000 units. So what will be the corresponding cost of producing this 1,000 unit? So from the two equations here, you choose one, right? You choose one. You can choose this one or you can choose one. You're going to have the same result. So from this equation here, we're going to replace x with 1,000, and you solve in order for you to find the cost, the corresponding cost of producing 1,000 unit. So whatever unit you have, this is how you proceed in order to find the cost at that point. So here we decided to go with this equation here. Just choose the one that you can see. It doesn't complicate your calculations, makes your life easier. So you just go for that one. So we choose 80,000 or the Akron equation, and then we replace x here with 1,000. Right, so now you're going to have 30,000 plus 75 between bracket 75 times 1,000. And this is what we have here between bracket. So we just replace x with 1,000. And then you do your calculations. The result is now going to be the amount or the cost of producing 1,000 unit. Right. So if you come to the equation here or the graph, this is 1,000. So on this side, if you draw a line going up and you also draw a line coming from, because you say the cost here is 105,000 rand. So 105,000. So that is somewhere here. So if you draw another line going up, like going this way, horizontally, going this way, you can see this line and this line will meet right here. And this is the crossover point between Bowling Green and Akron where the two lines will meet. But anyway, let's just progress and then we're going to come back to that. So now we are done with Akron and Bowling Green. The next crossover point we're going to consider Akron and Chicago. So here is Akron and Chicago. So the equation, we're going to just compare the two, right? We have them here. And you have them here. So the equation of Chicago is this one. So again, you solve for x. So you're looking for the value of x, which will be the volume, the point at which the two the two coastlines will meet. So if you solve for x here, do your calculations properly and slowly, you're gonna come up with a value of x of 1,600 unit, right? So this is the value on your x-axis, as I said, yeah. But you also need to find the corresponding cost of producing of 1,600 unit. So again, from the two equations that you just used here, you choose one, right? And then that one you replace x with 1,600. And here we chose the first one, and we replace x with a value of 1,600. You do your calculations, and that gives us 150,000 rand. So this is the cost of producing 1,600. In other words, the projection of 1,600 unit will result in the company spending 150,000, right? Good. So the next one is now Bowling Green, the next crossover point, Bowling Green and Chicago. So you check all the possible combinations that you can have. So here, Bowling Green and Chicago, so the two equations, so you also have them here. Bowling Green, this is the equation of Bowling Green according to what we have here. And on the other side is Chicago. Chicago is here, and this is the equation. So what do we have to do here? We have to solve for x. So solving for x, that gives us a value of 2,500 unit on the x-axis. Now, what is the corresponding cost at this point? So the corresponding cost here, to find it, you have to choose one of the equations here and then replace x with 2,500. So that's what we have done here, and then it gives us a value of 172,500 rand. So that is the cost of producing 2,500 unit. So now you already have these values here. Now you can go and plot the graph. And one thing that you also need to remember is that for you to plot a line, right? For you to plot a line, you need at least 2 points. Once you have 2 points, you can now plot the line. So in our case here, we have calculated the crossover point in unit and also in rands. So these two values here are going to give us 1 point. And we need another point. How do you find the other point? Is the fixed cost. Remember, the fixed cost doesn't change. So your starting point will be the fixed cost. So let's go to that graph so that I can explain from here. The first location from the example here is Akron. So what is the fixed cost for Akron? The fixed cost for Akron here is 30,000. So that will be our starting point in terms of plotting the graph. Before even we move on to the graph, let's just see the scale quickly. So obviously you need an appropriate scale here, but you can just choose any scale of your choice, because what you need to pay attention to is that the cost, you see the cost, there are big numbers here. We are dealing with big numbers. So if you are coming up with a scale that is too small, some of the numbers or the values won't be shown on this graph, and that might be a problem. So we usually say the bigger the better. So it's better to have a big graph so that all the values can be represented or can be seen. So here you see on the x-axis, they decided to go with 500 as the scale. So 0 to 500 from 5. So here you have a distance of 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. You could have also taken, let's say, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Or you could have taken 3, 3, or 4, 4, right? So, but it just need to be the scale or the same everywhere. Now, on this side here, they decided to go with 10,000. So the distance between two consecutive points is 10,000 up until you have 180 and so forth. The reason of doing this is that if you check the calculations here, you can see the highest cost here is 172,500. So in your scale, you must make sure on the side that amount can easily be included or can be seen on the scale. That's why if your scale is too small, you won't be able to contain all those values. So 172,000 should be somewhere here. Therefore, the scale looks appropriate, or the graph. So now let's come back to the cost lines. This Akron cost lines, this is what you call a cost lines. So in order for you to plot these cost lines, you need at least 2 points. Now, I say the starting point must be the fixed cost. Akron fixed cost here is 30,000. From the table here, say Akron fixed cost is 30,000. So your starting point must be the cost, I mean the fixed cost. So Akron, you have this point here. So we need the second one. So based on the calculations that we have done here, the intersection of a line coming from 1,000 unit going up and the intersection of an horizontal line coming from this amount here, 105,000 rand, the intersection will be our second point. So from here, we have 1,000. So you draw a line going up, completely up. And you also draw another line from this side because the corresponding cost of producing 1,000 units, right? You find it was 105,000 rand. So 105,000 rand. So 105, it should be somewhere here. So you also draw another line going this way. Let me see if I can use even, I don't want to go there, otherwise it's going to compromise the slide. So you draw another line going this way. And where these two lines, this one and this one will meet, that will be the crossover point or the break-even point or the point at which Boiling Green and Akron will meet. And now you have 2 points. You can draw the line for Akron, or you can plot the cost line, starting with the fixed cost going up, passing through that point. You just go, you just go up, right? So now you have the crossover point, right, between Bowling Green and Akron, and the same also for Akron. If you check the fixed cost for Bowling Green, the fixed cost for Bowling Green here is 60,000. So that means when you are plotting the Bowling Green cost lines, your starting point must be 60,000 to make things easier for yourself. You see Bowling Green here start with 60,000, and you already know that Bowling Green meet Akron at this point here. So you draw a line straight on that point, and here you have a coastline of Bowling Green, right? So once you are done with that, you're gonna move on to the next crossover point. Here is Akron and Chicago. So they meet at 1,600 unit and 150,000. So again, you identify 1,600 rand from the x-axis. So 1,600 should be somewhere here. I hope you guys can see my cursor. Should be somewhere here. 1,600 unit. So again, you draw a line going up, right? Going up all the way. And what is the corresponding cost at that point is 150 according to our calculations here. So 150,000. So 150,000, here's 150. So you draw another line also going this way. So where the two meet, that will be the crossover point. That will be the crossover point. So you just need to check which line is going to cross there. And according to our calculations, is Akron, right? Is Akron and Chicago. And also from here, you can see this is Akron going up, and here is Chicago. So Chicago here again, you check the fixed cost to find the starting point. Chicago, the fixed cost here is 110. So 110, so that's why you have here 110. And then you know the second point is here, so you just draw the line right there on top of those two points. And then now you have the coastline for Chicago. Right, so you're also gonna do the same thing for Chicago and Bowling Green. But if your drawings, everything is perfect, they will meet right here. And if you check our calculations there, we say that Chicago and Bowling Green, look, here's Chicago and Bowling Green. We say they will meet at this point here, 2,500 unit. And here you have 2,500 unit. So the corresponding cost, we calculated that is 172,500. 172,500. So that is the corresponding cost. So if you go up here and then you draw another line this side here, you're going to have 172. So they will meet here. So that is the second, or that is the cost, the crossover point between Chicago coastline and Bowling Green. So you have that. Now, the other thing that you can see, graphically, you can see what's going on here. But you can also solve this doing the calculations without the graph. But I'm not going to show you that right here. We'll see that one probably during our exercising sessions. So here, after plotting this graph here, now you need to interpret, you need to tell the story, what's going on, because the idea here is for the company to choose the optimal location, a location that minimizes the cost. So how do you go about doing that? You're still going to base your analysis on the crossover point. So you're gonna set from 0 to 1,000 unit. Akron has the lowest cost. Why? From 0 to 1,000, Akron has the lowest cost. Why? Because for a volume greater than 0 or within this range here, Akron always going to have the lowest cost. If, let's say you take here, okay, yeah, you already have 500. If you draw a line coming from 500 going up, right? Going up, the first cost line that this line coming from below here is going to meet will be the Akron coastline. So we're going to cross Akron first, after it you cross Bowling Green and then Chicago. So you consider the first coastline that this line coming from below here is going to meet, right? So once you do that, you can see Akron, any value that you're going to take from here, right? Between 0 and 1000, that line coming from below here is going to meet Akron first, or you're going to cross Akron first. And that's why we say that between 0 and 1000, Akron is the optimal location because it has the lowest cost. So if you want to extend your explanation, is that if you draw a line, it's like a projection. 500 going up, meeting this line here the first time, you check the cost, you will see that that cost will be the lowest. Because if you also go up with a line coming from 500 going up to Bowling Green here, your projection, your cost at this point will be definitely bigger than the projection using this cost line. So going up here, you will have the cost around this this amount. And if you go to Bowling Green, your cost will be around this amount here. So that's why simply understand that when you're going up, the first line that the first cost line that this line coming from below is going to meet, that shows that that's cost line is the optimal or provide the lowest cost. So the same thing for this range here. This is the crossover point. So 1000, between 1000 and 2500. This line here provided the lowest cost, which is Bowling Green, provide the lowest cost. Because if you take any value here, any volume, going up, that line is going to cross the Bowling Green coastline first. In that case, Bowling Green has the lowest cost for a volume between 1000 and 2500. And for a volume greater than 2500, this line here has the lowest cost. Even if it's 1 million unit, Chicago has the lowest cost because any value that you're going to consider greater than 2500, if you do a projection going up, Chicago will always be the best location. So some of the questions that you're going to have in the test is that I'll can provide you guys with a graph like this, and then I'll ask you questions from here, right? I can pick a specific volume here, and then you tell me the appropriate or the optimal location. So this is an exercise that you guys are going to do. And as the technology evolves, the way or the tools that you use in terms of plotting these graphs has also changed. So manually speaking, you can plot this graph, but I don't want you guys to be doing this, manually like that, because even online, you can even find open sources or platform that you can use, just input the equations, and then you draw this graph automatically online, and then probably you can even download the screenshot. So you can see all these values here. So I will show you guys during our exercises sessions how you can use the open sources in order to plot this graph. especially getting these values, the crossover point and all that. And then you can do the analysis of the intervals where the location is optimal. So what you also need to understand here is that from this graph here, if you are asked a question to identify the optimal location among the three locations, you cannot say it, Akron is the best location, and then you leave it like that. Within which range? So you have to tell, Akron is the best location or the optimal location for a volume between 0 and probably 1,000. Right. So you have to do that. Otherwise, what you are saying, it doesn't make sense. So you can see there are different ranges here or intervals that you have to consider and identify the optimal location. Don't just say Chicago is the best location. Within which range? All right. Good. So again, this could be solved like here graphically. We can see, but you can also mathematically unpack this question. But I will show you that when we'll be doing some of the exercises there that I have already prepared for you. So we're going to see how to solve this kind of, or to address this kind of scenarios mathematically without using the graph. Any questions? Beautiful stuff. So here's what we're going to do next. And this is going to be probably our last scenario, so we'll see. Our last method for today. Remember, guys, we didn't have class last week, so we really need to push. Right. So the next method that we're going to talk about is what we call the center of gravity. So the center of gravity is basically identifying an optimal distribution center in terms of supplying other retailers or other shops. And this is going to do it by reducing the distances, right, between the distribution center and probably the retail market and things like that. And this also has some kind of implications in terms of reducing the transportation cost. I know there is another method, but it's almost linked to the center of gravity in terms of reducing the distance, and to the distances costs are also associated with. So here it says that it considers location of market, volume of goods shipped to those market, shipping cost, or the distance. So you can see in terms of the distance, when we're talking about the distance, reducing the distance is also reducing the transportation cost. So let's look at this example here. No, not example. Okay, just went straight to the example. So it says that place the existing location on a coordinate grid. So we're going to have a grid whereby the distribution center can be represented. So the origin of the grid is arbitrarily chosen. So depending on the numbers or the coordinate that you have, and then you identify your own origin. Maintain relative distances. So this is in terms of the scale that you take. The same way we use our plotted the coastlines is also going to have almost the same scales. So just need to follow that. It says calculate the X and Y coordinate for center of gravity. So each location must have two coordinates, the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. Right? Assume cost is directly proportional to distance and volume shipped. So let's understand, I know you might find this formula difficult to understand, but don't worry too much. We're going to break this down from the example that is coming right after this slide. So here we have this example here. We have four locations here. We have Chicago, New York, Pittsburgh, Atlanta. This was supposed to speak to some provinces here in South Africa, but anyway. So each location has its X and Y coordinate. Chicago here you have X coordinate. Let me take my pointer. X coordinate, which is 30, and the Y coordinate here is 120. The same for New York, Pittsburgh, and Atlanta. So now the idea here is to find a center or a location or a place where a distribution center, right, could be positioned or placed or built in order to reduce the distances from the distribution center to Chicago, to New York, to Pittsburgh, to Atlanta, right? So that is the idea. Now, in terms of choosing the scale here to represent, anyway, we'll talk about that once we have done with the calculation, it's fine. So here you have a table that provides you with all the details that you need. And this is also the same thing that you're going to have in your test. We provide you with all that you need, and your job is just to do the calculations. So you're basically not going to do the dirty job of going to do market research, coming up with the volume and all that. It will be provided. So Chicago here, there are 2,000 containers that were shipped to and 1,000 containers were also shipped to Pittsburgh. 1,000 containers were shipped to New York, and 2,000 containers were shipped to Atlanta. So this is the volume, what the company shipped to or managed to supply these locations with. So now, first thing first, you have to calculate the X coordinate. You can also start with the Y coordinate. I mean, it doesn't impact anything. So the X coordinate, for you to calculate the X coordinate here, you must only focus on the X values when you are talking about the coordinate. So look at Chicago, you have 30. So you have 30 here. Now you multiply the X value by the volume that was, or the number of containers here. Here is 2,000. So 30 multiplied by 2,000 plus 90 multiplied by 1,000 plus 130 multiplied by 1,000 plus 60 multiplied by 2,000. That is your numerator. Now you have to divide, right, your numerator here by the number of containers shipped to these locations. So in other words, you have to sum up the volume here. So 2,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,000 plus 2,000. That's what you have here in the denominator. And then you just need to punch this new calculator to come up with 66.7. This is the X coordinate of that ideal center of gravity for the distribution center. So once you are done with that, you can now calculate the Y coordinate. Again, you only consider the Y coordinate. Don't mix the X and the Y. Otherwise, your answers or your analysis won't be accurate. So Y coordinate, Chicago is 120. So the same approach, 120 multiplied by 2,000, 110 multiplied by 1,000, 130 multiplied by 1,000, 40 multiplied by 2,000. And that's what you have here in the numerator. And the denominator is also the sum of the containers shipped to this location. So the sum of all this, right? Just sum up, and that would be the denominator. So you punch everything in your calculator, and that should give you 93.3. So now, for the center of gravity, we have the coordinate, the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So now, if you want to plot, you can plot this. So again, in terms of for our online test, you won't be plotting anything. So you mostly be asked just to calculate the x coordinate and the y coordinate, and that's it. But for the purpose of understanding the method, because the life does not also limit itself with the test, right? So here the origin of this graph here is arbitrary. So you choose whatever you want to put there, but just keep the distances constant. So if you choose here any distance, just make sure that all the numbers or the coordinate can be included here, right? Can be included. Now, with all these locations here already represented here on this grid, that you want to call the grid, yes, already represented here. So now what you need to do is just need to use the coordinate that you have calculated, the x and the y. Here the x coordinate is 66.7, and if you check nicely, 66.7 probably should be somewhere here. So we draw a line going up, and 93.3, that is your y coordinate, should be probably somewhere here, right? You draw another line where they are going to meet. That will be the center of gravity, which should be approximately somewhere here. All right, so this is the center of gravity. So this is the appropriate center of gravity, which will minimize the distances between the distribution center and each of these locations. So that's how you come up with the center of gravity. It's quite straightforward. Just need to follow the steps, and then you'll be able to come up with a center of gravity. So the last model here, I know it's a lot for one day. The last model here is the transportation model, but we're not going to do anything on this today. I'm gonna just give you guys a heads up. So here is all about, minimizing also the cost of transporting goods from one work center to another, or it could be from one distribution center to another distribution center. So we'll see. I'm going to explain this to you guys how to perform a transportation analysis, and I'll see whether we can even bring this in an assignment that you guys can do, or probably bring this in the SIG test. So we'll see. I'll give you guys more details around the transportation model. So yeah, guys, I think that is a lot for one day. I think we just need to go and digest this insight first, and then the next time where we're going to meet, we're going to have some exercises in order to better understand this chapter. So any questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right, it seems like there are no questions, so let's just take the attendance register. Oh no, there is a hand, there are some hands up here. Komodo, I can see your hand is up. And Ariel Wa Kasonga. I can see your hand is up.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to ask, is the session going to be recorded?
Yes, it's being recorded.
Okay, are you going to post it on Moodle?
Yes, it will be on Moodle. I'll try my best to post it there, but you can still access it using that link that you access to access this session.
All right, thank you, sir.
Awesome. Right. So let's take the attendance register, but in the meantime, if you have questions also, guys, you can ask. What I wanted to do first, I want to come on. I want to stop the recording before we move on. Stop the recording. All right, so I think after a few minutes, if you go